So my name is Matthew Cotton. I'm Professor of Public Policy at Teesside University, and I'll introduce my co-presenters as well today, David Tyfield and Andy Ewell. Is that how you pronounce your surname?
It's Yule.
Yule, thank you.
Yule, like Christmas.
Oh, cool. At Lancaster University, and Nick Gray, also at Teesside University. And what we're presenting today is a bit of background for a project that's funded through the Decarbonate seed corn funding on this concept of what we're calling carbon-free ports. Okay, next slide, please. I always wanted to say that. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to present about the Freeports policy, which is a kind of core government initiative as part of their sort of levelling up agenda for the regions. And really what we're looking at within this project, as it's going to start next month, is whether or not we can link together this kind of Freeports policy agenda with the kind of low carbon agenda, particularly around regional transport and maritime transport, and in some cases around air transport as well, for tourism and freight. And then once we've done a little bit of a presentation, a background around this kind of policy agenda and linking these together, what we're really interested in is getting some feedback from you as participants to do a little workshop around linking the themes within the presentation and within the project to the Decarbonate goals more generally. And it's a sort of little bit of co-production, if you can see if you can sort of shape our research agenda before we start going out and interviewing stakeholders. So we're really also seeking some initial input and ideas and feedback that can help us shape the sort of what and how of the research project. And just to say that your participation is really valuable and would sort of be incredibly helpful for our research, in part because the project itself is a very short 6 months, and we don't have a lot of time to to work this project up ourselves, and getting a bit of a head start with some input from external help would be very useful. So if you want to know about Freeports, so Freeports are a flagship kind of policy agenda in meeting this kind of post-Brexit, post-COVID-19 economic boost for the regions. Now, Freeports themselves are not a new concept. They have been around for a very long time, but were largely sort of disbanded and have now come back on the policy agenda thanks to Rishi Sunak, Chancellor of the Exchequer, who had written quite a fairly influential paper within government for the Policy Studies Institute in 2016, immediately after Brexit, talking about the role in which kind of these sort of free trade areas could play in establishing national hubs for global trade and investment. And the idea of a free port is that basically it's a kind of bounded area where industry can trade with very low tariffs and very low taxes and simplified planning system in order to maximize trade for things which require a very kind of rapid turnaround. So if you think about the just-in-time model for making cars, for example, a part might be produced in one country within Europe and then processed in the UK and then immediately exported to be integrated into another part somewhere else. Now, after Brexit, of course, all of these things would have required import tariffs to be paid as they come into the country for processing. The idea of a free port area is that it kind of reduces that need and creates a region which can generate economic activity. The idea is that within this kind of free port agenda, you create hotbeds of innovation, particularly in manufacturing and processing industries. And this also fits into this kind of local economic development towards sort of levelling up agenda, particularly for the north of England. And it's, again, through low tax, low regulation and light paperwork. And there were 8 which were announced in the budget in 2021, and nearly all of those, I think all of those will come online, he says confidently, as of next year. But of course, one of the things that interested us is that actually reading Sunak's original paper in 2016 on Freeports, there was really no mention of climate change. There was some evidence to point that it might be better for the environment in a fairly sort of roundabout way. But the development of a kind of renewed industrial development in ports generates questions around carbon emissions, but also air quality and other environmental impacts, not just within the port itself, but as you'll see, the Freeport status is given to much broader economic areas than just maritime ports. So it also links to things like regional transport and some of the core components of the Decarbonate research program. So combining this kind of economic development policy and green growth requires more joined up thinking, or policy coherence, as it's sometimes known, around transport and energy use regionally and from ship to shore. And it's also important to note that though the sort of low carbon or net zero agenda as it relates to the Freeport policy program has been rather neglected, if we can put some political momentum and support behind the Freeports agenda and show how we can also achieve low carbon goals at the same time, you know, we could think this could be sort of politically persuasive as well. So really the question we are asking is how can we get both of these things to happen at the same time and in concert with one another? I'm trying to work where I'm up to. Yes, so the Freeports overall project aims are to ensure that we provide kind of low carbon economic development, and the objectives for our project are to implement a sort of place-based analysis of Freeports. So we are looking in two regions, one in Teesside and one in Liverpool, which are both part of this broader Freeports agenda. And the argument is that we're trying to open up policy windows. This is basically creating a space for policy to change. We're doing a lot of co-production work with partners. We have a range of different partners locally in Liverpool and in Teesside to create a sort of policy framework and an enduring forum that will allow us to integrate transport decarbonisation with other issues around particularly air quality and other forms of environmental quality and social sustainability strategies to ensure that all of the so-called sort of tsunami of jobs that is supposed to arrive also has broader sustainable development, meets our sort of broader sustainable development goals for these regions. And to also provide some advice and practical recommendations, and then hopefully to scale up this more place-based approach to create a broader carbon-free port strategy that would influence kind of national policy on these issues. Okay, so the partners, we have local partners and national partners. The local government intelligence unit. We have some partnerships both within Liverpool City region and the Tees Valley Combined Authority region. So we have sort of buy-in from local policy stakeholders, and then a range, as partners within the project, and then also a range of other interested parties, including groups that are opposed to transport developments in Liverpool, and also those who are not in power, including the local Green Party and Friends of the Earth within Teesside, and also some of the kind of regional partners like Middlesbrough Environment City, who are interested in local sustainable transport solutions. I'm trying to remember where I'm passing over. Do you want to take over from this bit? Ooh. And I'll mute. Okay, I'll carry on. So the idea of working with local partners includes politicians, and also we're trying to, so we've established those connections. The four of us working on the project are all social scientists of various different stripes, but our sort of core research question is how can Freeports be best leveraged to drive global leadership in systemic decarbonisation of transport in the north. And the idea is to build on this network both within Decarbonate and within the project itself to build a sort of longer, probably Economic and Social Research Council project that follows up from this one. What we are doing is obviously a range of online methods, but this might change now with the kind of opening up of society to more face-to-face in the future. We're going to interview a range of different stakeholders and hold some workshops to establish both participatory planning to decarbonise the kind of Freeport associated transport in the region. And we're also looking for your involvement. It's very warmly welcomed if you're happy to take part. So we'll also hold a range of kind of stakeholder workshops towards the end of this 6-month pilot project that then feeds into this kind of broader follow-on project as well. So your involvement at this stage might, if you're interested, follow into a broader bid in the future. And we're also looking for any contact points that you might have that you might be willing to share. If you're willing to share those kind of contacts, that'd be very helpful for us as well.
Okay, sorry, Matthew.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I was silent earlier because I couldn't see how to turn my unmute. Anyway, I found it. Okay, so I'll take over now. Just a quick look at the time. Yeah, so Matthew's already given quite a full outline to the project, but obviously Decarbonate is focused on these 3 key aspects of a place-based agenda for maximally expedited decarbonisation of transport in the north, and we can make sense of what we're doing under those 3 headings, which I'll just take us through quickly in reverse order. So in terms of first to the north, as Matthew said, we're focusing on 2 of ask me to start. Sorry, I don't know what's going on here. I'll press that. Yeah, there's actually a 3rd Freeport in the north in Humberside, but we thought we're focusing on these 2 in the first instance. Both places, Liverpool, Merseyside and Teesside, are profoundly affected by deindustrialisation since the 1980s and by north and south regional inequalities. And this leads to major questions of not just economic but social and environmental challenges, which are all linked together in complex ways in both of these places. Of course, there's also loads of literature over the years that has shown that growth-focused projects often ignore or even sacrifice the poorest communities, even perhaps as they come with highfalutin promises about jobs, etc., and economic growth to that area, but for whom? So we're obviously interested in trying to make these promises come true and to explore the possibility of the much sought after triple win of economic, social and environmental benefits. In Teesside, another interesting distinction between Teesside and Liverpool is that is the party political aspect of this. Teesside now being run by a Tory mayor as part of the Red Wall that fell, and the Teesside plan here summarised, you can see, is very spread out across the region, covering 4,500 acres. So likely to be the largest in the UK. The mayor has talked in terms of, as Matt's already mentioned, a tsunami of jobs and investment to turbocharge this regional economy, which, as I've mentioned, has been depressed for some time. But the question there is that while there's all this mention of supply of opportunities, there's a question of who is actually going to benefit from it. And not only is this plan in Teesside not so far taking into consideration decarbonisation, but it seems to quite explicitly foresee an expansion of air freight and regional tourism. There's also the question about economic displacement, which hangs over the whole of the Freeports project as a whole. Is this going to simply, in other words, move existing activity from elsewhere? So rather than creating new economic activity, simply moving it around at the cost of other places, either within Teesside itself, going from just outside the Freeport zones into the Freeport zones, or potentially from other areas just up the road in Tyneside. Liverpool's plan also is greatly spread, as you can see. It's hard to read that, I'm afraid, but as you can see, greatly spread across Merseyside. In fact, it goes all the way into Manchester at Port Salford, which is another site owned by Peel Ports, who are the owners of the Port of Liverpool. Again, great promises about the extent of what this will bring economically, but there are still questions as well there. While it aligns with existing plans to revive international maritime innovation leadership, you might just be able to make out in the diagram there's a place called Wirral Waters on the the west side of the Mersey. So that's near Birkenhead and its long-standing shipbuilding prowess. There are also questions about existing questions about what this is going to do to local infrastructure, especially with the Freeport being so distributed. If there's going to be this massive increase in trade into Liverpool through the Port of Liverpool, how is it going to get to all these other places around Merseyside? And one high-profile case is very close to the Port of Liverpool in Sefton, which is a plan by the Highways Agency to build a road through one of the few remaining green areas. So behind the whole project, we see behind the whole Freeports project, even though it's not really yet been foregrounded by the plans themselves, is the challenge of decarbonising transport. And this becomes even more obvious as I've mentioned, the Freeports aren't even going to be in a single site, but rather distributed across the region. So this involves, for the Freeports to be a success, even on their own economic terms, it's going to involve a massive reconfiguration of transport infrastructure and massive investment. And the default scenario, we have to say, is that this is going to mean actually a potential lock-in of a great deal more carbon-intensive infrastructure, and rather than any meaningful system transformation to local zero carbon alternatives. In short, a major premise of our project is that the Freeports are a major lens and opportunity for transport decarbonisation if they are grasped as such, but also that transport decarbonisation is a major lens to look at Freeports as a policy success or not. As Matthew's also alluded, there are at least two analytically distinct issues regarding the decarbonisation of transport that Freeports raise. First of all, there is this possibility of using them as a lever towards a major step forwards in the decarbonisation of the regional surface transport around the region, both in terms of the decarbonisation of the transport, but also with that potentially a transformation of the local socio-economy and its mobility demands, so that high carbon transport maybe is not something that Freeports even presuppose any longer in order to be a success. But the other aspect of it is in terms of low carbon shipping as a major opportunity again for innovation and new jobs in the north. Finally, then, in terms of a place-based agenda and approach, we also are committed and very interested in exploring these two Freeports from this perspective, noting that the success of the Freeports from the perspective we're looking at is intimately and inseparably interlinked with other really important issues, issues that maybe are more important locally, politically, regarding local socio-economic prosperity and dynamism, or on the other hand, deprivation, Also questions of health and environmental well-being, pollution and associated environmental injustices, and also the building up of local skills, and as we've already mentioned, the trying to head off the dangers of economic displacement, or even an increase in crime through increase of trade in these places. Such is the complexity that it feels to us impossible to foresee that all of these good things will come to pass without concerted and enduring involvement of the diverse local stakeholders that represent all these place-based concerns. So our pilot project aims to kickstart that process to the extent that the plans themselves don't already have that built in.